Friends, I'm going to ask everyone to please find seats. We're about to begin the services for Mrs. Esther Reiss. I would ask you also, if you have a cellular device, to please turn it to the off position. Family's going to enter in just a moment. Please ask you, if you're able, to please rise. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Leonard Matanke of Congregation Kins.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני מי יגור באוהליך, מי ישכון בהר קודשך, הולך תמים ופועל צדק ודובר אמת בלבבו, לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה, וחרפה לא נשא לקרובו. נבזה בעיניו נמאס ואת ירא אדוני יכבד, נשבע להרע ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. שיר המעלות, ממעמקים קראתיך אדוני, אדוני שמע וקולי, תהיינה אוזנך קשובות לכל תחנוני. אם עוונות תשמור יה אדוני מי יעמוד, כי ממך סליחה למען תברא. קיוויתי אדוני קיוותה נפשי ולדברו הוחלתי. נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר, שומרים לבוקר. יחל ישראל אל אדוני כי עם אדוני החסד והרבה מופדות. והוא יפדה את ישראל מכל עוונותיו. שיר למעלות, אשא עיני על ההרים מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומריך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, אדוני ישמור את צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. I call upon Rabbi Gutstein to recite the Eshet Chayil.
איש חייל מימצא ורחוק מדינים מכרע, בטח בו לב בעלה ושלו לא יחזור, כמלעשה טוב ולא רע כל ימי חייה. דורשו צמר ופישתי מטס בחפץ כפיה. היוסה כניוס זוכר ממרחק תביא לחמה, ותוקם בעוד לילה ותיתן טרף לביסוף וחוק לנערוסיה, זמם השדה ותיקחיה מפרי כפיה נת הכרם. חגרו ויעוז מסניה ותעמית זרועוסיה. תום הכיתוב סחרה לא יכבה בלילה נעירה, ידיה שילחה וקישור וכפיה תמכו פולך, כפה פרסה לעני וידיה שילחה לא אביון, לסיר לביס המשלג כיכל ביסה לבוש שנים, מרבדי מססלה שש וארגמן לבושה, נעדה באשר עם בעלה בשבטו עם סיק הארץ. סדי נסה ותמכור והחגור נסנה לכנעני, עוז והדר לבושה ותשחק ליום האחרון. פיה פסחה וחוכמה וסורס חסד על לשונה, צפיה ליחוס ביסה ולחם עצלס לא סוחל, קמו בניה וישרו הבעלה ויהללה, רבוס בונוס על סחויל ויעטליס על כולנה. שקר החין והבל היופי, אישה ירס אדוני היסי סלול, תנו לה מפרי ידה ויהללוה ואשרים מעשיה.
Son-in-law Moshe Khan will recite Kapitel Chof Gimel.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסור. פינוס דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחos ינהלני.
Binot Esha Yerbitzeni Almei Menuchot Yanhaleni.
נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו.
Yancheni b'maglei tzedek, Nafshi meshovev Yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo.
גם כי אלך בגיא צלמובס לא רירו, כי אתו עמודי, שבטכו משענתך, המו ינחמוני.
Gam ki elech b'gei tzal maved lo yirara ki ata imadi shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni.
תרוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררוי, דישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויו.
Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya.
אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית שרינוי ליאורך ימים.
Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yamei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai liorach yamim. This afternoon, there is so much that can be said, so much that should be said about Mrs. Esther Reiss, alea shalom, Esther Malka bat Asher Zalig HaKohen, that it's difficult to imagine where to begin and where to end. Because Mrs. Reiss was a survivor who did so much more than survive. She built, and she brought the traditions and joy of pre-war Europe into present-day America. And she was a woman of grace and charm, a true Esther Malka, whose warmth and impeccable taste were ever present, even in recent years when her health was less than ideal. But more than anything else, Mrs. Reiss, alea shalom, was a true akeret habayit, the focal point, the ikar of her family and home, who supported her husband, rejoiced in her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, or to paraphrase David HaMelech, a true em habanot smecha, and a person for whom that love, that joy, that caring was repaid over and over again as her children and grandchildren celebrated her, cared for her, and ensured that her every day up until today was filled with the honor, love, and respect that she so richly deserved. And while in a few moments we'll be hearing from Rabbi Unger and from Avram Diamond and Ephraim Diamond and Mimi Selesky, there is one brief thought that I want to share from an unusual source, the mitzvah of ma'akah, of creating a fence around high places that we'll read about this Shabbos in Shul. What does a ma'akah have to do with today? Explain the late Rishon LeZion, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu Zatzal, that al pi drush, homiletically, the mitzvah of Makeh reminds us that while it's human nature to have big dreams and great aspirations, sometimes it's necessary to set boundaries and limits to one's aspirations so that they're realistic and achievable, which I guess is true. And yet, looking back at the life of Mrs. Reiss, I can honestly say that she was one of those exceptions, that her life proves that there are people whose big dreams and great aspirations are attainable. Just look at her family and all that she accomplished. Look at our community and all that she accomplished. Look at all of the people who are here today to pay tribute to this woman's extraordinary life, and you'll see how much one person can achieve, how boundaries can be stretched, obstacles overcome, and opportunities seized. On behalf of us all, I pray that Mrs. Reiss, Esther Malka Bat Asher Zelig HaKohen Alea Shalom, be a good beiter for her family, and that the memory of all that she and her beloved husband, Reb Yaakov Zal, with whom she is now reunited, that their lives inspire and comfort all who are mourning her loss today. To the entire Reiss, Cohn, Diamond, Selesky, and Kahn families, our hearts go out to you. Your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your sister was truly a wondrous soul, and she'll be sorely missed by so many people whose lives she touched so profoundly. May her memory be for a blessing. Bila hamavet lanetzach u'mocha Hashem Elokim dimami al kol panim. It's my honor to call upon Rabbi Unger.
Wir sind zusammengekommen, aufzugeben, der Covid-18, wir haben gehört von Rabbi Metenki, nobele, chusheve, bescheidene, königliche Frau. Wo ische Esther Malke, Basra Busha Zelig HaKohen, Lea Shulem, gewinnt der Eishes Chayel von Rabbi Esther Reiss, Uleva Shulem, wo zusammen haben sie aufgebaut, ein herrliches Stieb, Kinder, einiglich und ihr einiglich, alle Jerai Hashem, ולום די teure im Machzika teure. Und durch übrigens ein herrlich Matze zu leben bis 91 Jahre zu bescheinen die Mischpuche. Ich habe gesagt, wenn ihr Mann ist weg, als jetzt wie der Malke von der ganzen Mischpuche. Eine Malke, Esther Malke, die eine richtige Malke. Nächten haben wir geendigt, der Parshas Shoftim, sehr interessant. Teure Deutsch hat uns Nächten geendigt, wie Atu Teva Hadam Nuki Mikebechu, ki Sase Hayusha Be'ayna Yashem. Die Woche heibt sich unter Parsha, ki Saitzai Lam Chum Alavechu. Sehr interessante Sache, man trefft in der Chazal, Ploini Yutzu Nuki Menechusov, ואין הנוע ממנו. הנוקי kann auch, Pashat Nuki der teure meint, als man darf ausräumen schlechte Blit. Aber du sogar bei der Nefteris, sogar bei uns, wenn du jetzt bei der Lavaie, darf man ins Atu Teva Dam Nuki, es ist ein großer geworden Blit, es ist niftig geworden, ische Geschive, darf es sein, das soll nicht sein Nuki, sondern soll man aussitzen die Gelegenheit, im Mitnehmen die Rachkeit mit bald reden warten wegen dem. Die interessante Sache ist, als die Woche heibt sich unter Teure, ki Saitzai la Machum ala Vechu, wir stehen jetzt Umfang Chodesh Elul, sucht der Rebbeinu Leulam. Die Geister raus gegen die Eizehore, die Geister raus, jetzt kommt die Jumne Ruhem, und alle Keuches wollen fighten gegen Kal Yisrael, wollen bringen kolmine Sachen, ki Saitzai, als ins Gai mal raus, dem ist in der Suna Hashem Lekechu B'Yedechu. Interessante Sache, als Umfang der Parsche steht im Pusik, I bochsu es soviu es immer jerech jumem. Sogt der heilige Zohar Kodesh, der Zohar Kodesh sogt, was meint ihr Bach so, es wird Jechiyomim? Sogt der Zohar Kodesh, das meint man Chodesh Elul. Chodesh Elul ist Jerach Yomim, a ganze Chodesh, was Moshe Rabbeinu hat gebeten, Rachmen bei der Eibeste, darf, sogt der Zohar Kodesh, darf man das ausnutzen, sich ziegereiten zu der Größe Mechumme, was kommt jetzt in die Yom Neruah. Der Nefteris ist geboren geworden in Stutt Koschitze. Mitgemacht im Mechumme, a Sach Schwierigkeiten, in an nicht normaler Schiss, wo der Spruch hat gehabt. Der Tate, der Mame, sie mit ihren Brides, na Rebbe gekommen kann Amerika ganze Heid. Man Tate Lea Schulem, Ulava Schulem, geblieben der einzige von der ganzen Mischpuche. Der einzige von der ganzen Mischpuche. Baruch Hashem, da haben solche gewähnt. Tate, Mame, mit der Brides, mit der Rebbe gekommen kann Amerika, nicht gar mal als Schiss, wo der Mischpuche hat gehabt. Und sie haben noch warten. Der Stieb, wer ist reingekommen in den Stieb? Ich kenne den Spruch bei 40 Jahren. Wer ist reingekommen in den Stieb? Ist gewoon Mechibbe dort. Gezegd is ook een eisen Mechibbe, dan gaan we ze Brios. Meile der Rabbi Yankiv Stieb, mit den Nefteres, gewähnt mit Menschen mit Gebudem. Weil sie am jeder ein Mechabit gewähnt, sie am jedem ein Mechabit gewähnt, dann sei gewonnen, ist ein Mechabudem. Als Stieb ist macht sich teurer. Plenty Menschen pflegen ansteigen bei mir, pflegen dort da reinkommen, in allem gewiss, aber Rabbi Yankiv hat in besonderen Bias, hat einen offenen Stieb. Rabbi Yankiv hat gehabt Schirem in der Hose. In der Hose, es gab Gedingen Tamida Chachomim, heranzukommen in den Stieb. Man hat gelernt, Schuhe lang in den Stieb, tog an, Rabbi Yankiv hat a full day. Er hat ein größer Businessman, bei nicht gewollt anschlafen bei Nacht. Nicht allein schlafen man an. Als hat Tamida Chachomim reinkommen zu ihm in den Stieb, in sein Haus, ob man gehend die ganze Nacht, ganz zu dem Effekt, ist man durchgegangen. Ich gelernt mit der Rav Teller, eine Woche später Rav Teller ist weg, hat ein Geding, Rav Moshe und Perstein reinkommen in den Stieb, hat gelernt, Schirm, wieder Gesidron. Das ist gewesen, once a day, once a week. Jeden Tag, noch der Office, noch der reinkommen, man hat herangearbeitet, als nicht der wechselgangene Tag, und mit der Teure. Rabbi Yankiv, eine Woche, hat gerade das Schiefe zu dedicaten und Kodesh. Das heißt, mit seinem Rebbe zu der Stieb, mit Esther Malke, der Stieb, hat gerade das Schiefe für die heiligste Sachen, wo sie haben zu bekommen. Und Kodesh, wo ist der heiligste Platz. Das ist alles, was Rabbi Yankiv hat getan, ist gemacht geworden zusammen mit Esther Malke, mit Lea Schulem. Zusammen haben sie das aufgebaut. Ische Esther Malke, was der Busche sehr gekommen ist, eine richtige ischige Scheire. Eine richtige ischige Scheire. Sie hat gebackt ihr Mann nicht 100%, nur 1000%. 1000%. Ich habe geredet zu Mrs. Cohen, ihr Brüder, ihr dann Schwester, Rabbi Yankivs Schwägerin, hat wie gesagt, als ein Umfang, hat sie ist auch gegangen zu der Arbeit. Sie ist gegangen zur Arbeit, sie hat geholfen zu supporten die Sprüche. Später, wie sie gewinnt, ein richtiger Support. Es ist nicht ganz sicher, aber jeder weiß, dass der Weizen nach Heide ist geboren geworden bei seinem Basement auf Keating Avenue. Ich gewinnt der erste Meeting. Kämen der massig sein, wo es das Christus ist von der Sprache als Ries? Kämen das massig sein? In jeder Schuh wird produziert in der Weizen nach Heide, wenn der Heide ist in Session, über 5 Millionen Mitzvahs. Hour by hour. Im Rabbi Yankiv Reiss, Ulva Schum, jetzt erst mal, sie ist ein Schüttes mit ihm. Es ist nicht normal, das Schießen, was mit dem Spruch hat. I came into the house when Rabbi Yankiv was not healthy so much. The dedication from Mrs. Reiss to Rabbi Yankiv on his care in the exercise, mit jede Sache, everything was so watched by her. So top notch. I also want to say that I'm mamish the spool from the family. We all know that when somebody passes away, certain fights happen, certain things happen, uncomfortable things. Baruch Hashem, b'dei mishpucha. The way they lived together, they worked together, how they took care of their father, how they took care of their mother. It's mind-boggling to sehen in our generation today, zum dieser Dedication von Kindern, wie das gekommen. Sie haben gesehen bei seiner Tate Mama. Übergebenkeit eins zur zweite. They saw the dedication between the husband and wife. So they took this and took this to the next level. So ich will zurückgehen jetzt zu Jiddisch. Der Handlung auf Teres ist a weidisch einot Mire. Man macht das nicht noch. We don't create these kinds of people today. The Bescheidenkeit, taking the back seat when the man is gewähnt dort, almost a back seat. Die ganze Benehmung ist ein Muster. Ich kann nicht sagen alles, was ich weiß, aber eine von den Sachen, was ich bin mamisch sehr in das Spur gewähnt von ich, Esther Malke, Lea Schulem, ist die Dedication für andere. Mamisch mit Asamin gewisse Sachen, wo sie gefühlt hat, ist wichtig, they have to take care of it. Such a dedication with such a Starkheit for other people is legendary. Mamisch legendary. We say how she went out of her way. It wasn't known for her. Sie verlangt Sachen für andere, which is mamisch legendary. So the boy schon Chumunas auf ins. Als jetzt sie geht darauf, also wir haben, thank you, schon wieder Mann, sie geht sich reuniten mit Rabbi Yankov, weil da bestellt von dieser Susanna Gitte Bete. She cared so much about her family and the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. Everything was so touched. We got so touched. Jetzt, sie geht zusammenkommen mit ihrem Mann, soll der Eibste helfen. Als sie soll sagen, Gitte Bete, als jeder eine soll sagen, gesinnt, jeder eine darf Shadichem, jeder darf Kinder, alles soll gehen Kashira bei sei, warten, Nachriss mit Tatzluche und Avuche, die Bonschen helfen, also schon bekiem wären, der Pusse, Gimucha, Hashem, Dümmel, Al-Kapunim, Vechepos, Amma Yusoi, V'yirachim, Yechapo, Uvoin, Nevule, Zion, Goibim, Haibi, Yamaini, Omain.
We've come together to give the Kavod Achron to our mother, mother-in-law, grandmother, great-grandmother, Esther Malka Bas Asher Zelig HaKayin Oleha Shalom, a woman who witnessed the atrocities of the Shoah, but had the fortitude and strength to build a new life with Zaidi, which was and still is L'Shem U'Seferis. Her devotion to family had no bounds. There was nothing she wouldn't do for them and to her extended family. As the first son-in-law to come into the family, I was welcomed with open arms, with unconditional love, which never ceased. The same is true for Sam and Moshe as well. She lived a life devoted to Hashem and His Torah, always looking to help others, whether family, friends, and even strangers. Together with Zaidi, they were involved in building many Moshe Torah, tzedakah organizations, locally, nationally, and internationally. She was a true Eshes Chayil in every sense of the word. Her devotion to Zaidi was exemplary, especially the years that he was sick. She would never leave his side, even missing day for Shabbos. The same is true in the time of year that we are now. We just started Chodesh Elul, which is the 6th month of the year, a month of preparation for the 7th month, Tishrei, the month when we daven for a healthy, happy, and prosperous year. Oy, Rabbeinu Shloim, do we need Rachmei Shemayim? Just think back what transpired this past year. It's overwhelming how much we have to do and how much we have to be mistawel. But Hashem, being a Baal Rachmanis, takes back special neshamos in the Chodesh of Elul to be mispalel in front of the Kisei HaKavod, so we can have the schusim we need for the coming year. Savta was one of those special neshamos, and Hashem wanted her to advocate for Klal Yisrael. So whatever sorrows we have, she should be mispalel for all of us, and we should have a good gesund year. Shlomo HaMelech in Koheles lists 14 itim, l'chol eis zman ve'eis. Eis lotzeis, eis loledes, ve'eis lomos, a time to be born, a time to die. Eis litos, a time to plant, ve'eis lakar, netuya, and a time to rip out. And then there's one more, eis safud, ve'eis rakud, a time to wail and a time to dance. All the other itims begin with the lamed, eis lotzeis, loledes, ve'eis lomos. But the one of Eis Safut, Eis Rakud, is without the lamed. Says all the other groupings cannot happen at the same time. One cannot plant and rip out. One cannot be born at the same time die. However, Sfut and Rikud can happen together, as the Minchas Yitzchak says. When someone passes away, in Olam Hazeh, the wailing for the loss, we wail for the loss we suffered. But in Olam Haba, there is dancing among all the tzaddikim. They're together with Ribono Shel Olam, welcoming a beautiful new neshama. Savta, we were all devastated that we no longer witness your radiant smile and your wise sage. But in Shemayim, they are eagerly awaiting your arrival. Your parents, who you loved so much, will be there to greet you with dance. Zaidi will be there with open arms, finally reunited. The connection that you had with Zaidi was incredible. They say over a story from one of the Gedolim that he took his wife to the hospital and he told the doctor, "Our leg hurts." That's how they were connected so much with each other. We in this world are in a stage of siput, mourning, but we ask for Ribono Shel Olam that we should be zeicha to emulate your ways. Normally at this point we would say we ask mechila from the nifteres, but I don't, speaking for Rachel, Mimi, and Shashi, I don't think they have to ask mechila. I think they've done an incredible, it's not even incredible, what they were supposed to do for their mother, and before that to their father. Savta should be a Melech Yisharov for the whole family, and we should only share simchas together.
The Gemara says in Megillah, Esther min haTorah minayin. How do we know, where's the core of, where do we know Esther, where's the reference to Esther? It's talking about Esther in the Megillah, in the Torah. And the Gemara answers, Anoichi haster aster es panai. The reference is to the pasuk where Hashem says that he was hidden. Esther Malcolm, my Savta Bas Asher Zela Kayin, she was a hidden child. She emerged from that hiddenness of Haster Aster, and she emerged from that darkness to build, together with my Zaidi, a home, a family, a community, a business, and a legacy of Torah and Chesed that we all know. I want to start with very much on my mind a regret. A few weeks ago, my mother called me. She was coming to Chicago to visit my Savta, and she asked if I wanted to come along. And selfishly, I said no. And the reason is I was anticipating my daughter, she was going to get engaged, and I was hoping to bring her and the chassan to visit. And so I was being very selfish because I didn't want to come to say goodbye to her. I wanted to come and celebrate with her here and to give her that nachas, that last nachas of seeing my daughter engaged. And so I do regret that very much so, because I wasn't able to do that. But I'm glad that I'm here today. And before I begin, just a few more words, I did want to take the opportunity to ask Mechila from Savta on my behalf and on my wife's behalf and my children's and my siblings and my cousins and everybody else who is not going to get the opportunity to speak today. If we did not show her the proper kavod, if we didn't show her the proper respect, if we didn't make those efforts when we should have. Okay, so I was lucky. I was lucky when I was growing up. I grew up and I had two great-grandmothers. I was unique. I had two great-grandmothers growing up and all of my grandparents. I had Sapta's mother, I knew she was Bobby Chocolate, and that's what I knew. But the old chocolate, you know, it turned white already, but that's how I remember her. And then my father's grandmother I knew as well. And I had the opportunity to learn from them, you know, by not just by, you know, hearing about them, but by learning by example. And Baruch Hashem, my children had the exact same schus. They grew up with two great-grandmothers. Earlier this year, my wife's grandmother passed away, and of course, earlier this morning, their other grandmother, my Savta, passed away. And so, unfortunately, that generation is unfortunately a dying breed, and we need to take those opportunities to learn from them. But Baruch Hashem, myself and my children and my cousins, we had the opportunity to capture a glimpse of that older generation. It was a generation of tremendous, but yet very simple faith. A generation that essentially was able to rebuild a vibrant Yiddishkeit spun from literally faint strands of memory. There was nothing to build upon, but they somehow did that. A generation for who, despite their many challenges, and at least in my experiences, were able to impart to us the joy of family, the joy of experiencing life, and really the joy of just simply being present. So over the last number of years, and my wife will attest to this, people would ask me how old my Savta was. And I was like, 70? You know, to me, in my mind, she was always that very vibrant Savta. She was always ever present, hosting us for Thanksgiving, Pesach, summer vacations. She was our Savta one, for those who recall. She was a beautiful and dignified woman, but to us grandchildren, she was Savta. The same Savta who at the office would let us use the stamp machine. You know, we didn't no idea that we were charging hundreds of dollars, but just throwing envelopes in. But that was the same Savta who was making Kremzulach, Erev Pesach, and Pesach noodles already from Purim. She was the Savta of yoga, Kanela, and walking, but she was also the same Savta who managed the mikveh congregation Yehuda Moshe, the Savta determined to learn Yiddish, and the Savta who took pride in the many Torah accomplishments of her children and her grandchildren. She was the Savta afraid of heights, yet tolerated our ski and Switzerland trips. She was the Savta who instilled in me my fascination for lazy Susans. I can't begin to explain why, but I do. And she was the Savta whose house was turned into a dormitory over Pesach, well after I was married and had children. She was the Savta of Medi Musil, which now at a certain age I understand. But But she was also the Safta of Tseno Rena, which I have her copy, and she was the Safta who appreciated retail therapy. She was the mother of the famous Reiss sisters. We get stopped all the time. They see one and they know all three, wherever we go, the famous Reiss sisters, but she was the Safta to countless grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She was the Safta who allowed herself to be interviewed by her children and grandchildren, allowing them to learn about her history and from where she came. She was the Safta who loved our Zaidi very much, but she was the Safta beloved to us all as well. It should be self-evident that obviously these are my small representation of memories that I have. I didn't have a chance to poll my siblings and my cousins and everyone else to represent, but I'm sure they all share some of these and they can expand on these a great deal. But these are the memories that I carry of her and those that I will remember. I am sure that she will be a Meilitz Yeshar for our entire family, for my mother, her sisters, my father and his brothers-in-law, her brothers and her sisters-in-law, and the entire family. Tehei nishmasa tzrura b'tzara chayim, bila amavas lenetzach, u'macha Hashem dima me'al kol panim.
Our beloved mom was born 4 days after Purim and was aptly named Esther Malka. She was born in Kosice, Czechoslovakia, to a Hasidic family. When the war began, Hungarian families were forced to leave, so her family moved to, sorry about my pronunciation, Shatra Uihel, Hungary. When my mother was 11, she was hidden in plain sight in Budapest. Following the war, my mom and her parents and 3 brothers moved to Chicago. My mother met her husband, my father, here in Chicago. Their first date was to the movies, as was their last date together. My mother loved the theater, symphonies, dance, and was an avid reader. One of my oldest memories was going to a production of West Side Story as a small child. She shared these interests by schlepping us to piano lessons, violin, ballet, horseback riding, you name it. And skiing. We loved to ski, but my mom, not so much. But being the brave soul she was, she tried for years to overcome her fear of skiing and heights, and she was a great sport. Mom was a great cook of all food Hungarian. Kokos, dios, makos, chipkelich mit bundelich, and mushy spaghetti. She sewed, she knitted, she crocheted, and she needle pointed, and she taught us all of those skills, except she was always better at all of them. My mom was a truly devoted wife. My father cared for her until he could not. She cared for him with love and dignity until he was not. My mother was wise and smart. Her lack of schooling during the war did not stop her from achieving her GED as an adult and graduating from DePaul University with 3 little girls at home. She was the role model for my sisters and I, and for her amazing granddaughters, to place scholarship among our priorities. Our mother was devoted to her parents and her brothers. Shmilu and Yassel, Yehudit and Charlotte, thank you for your support and love always. Our mother was faced with significant challenges during the course of her entire life. She could not choose the challenges she endured, but she taught us how to react to situations with dignity, compassion, and clarity. She taught us life lessons up to and including how to spend her final days. We struggled with some decisions, but as usual, she forged a path of patience and virtue, of quiet kindness and care. We need to thank the truly caring and giving people who helped care for our mother, Marina, Valentina, Canella, Dr. Brenda Solomon, Dr. Zachary Solomon, and Dr. Sheridan. We also thank Park Plaza for being a safe and welcoming home for her for more than 8 years. How do I sum up the legacy of a life? Mommy, I miss your smile already. But I look out at all of you, whom she loved so much. You are her legacy, her past, and her future. Mamele, schlaf gesund, Mishamala.
Please rise for the Kilmale.
El male rachamim, shochein b'maromim, amtzei menucha nechona, tachas kanfei hashechina, b'malos kedoshim u'tehorim, kezoar harakia mazirim, lenishmas Esther Malka, Bas Reb Asher Zelig HaKohen Shelcha Leolama Bavur Shenitein Tzedaka Be'ad Haskoras Nishmasa Began Eden Tei Menuchasa Lochein Bal Rachamim Yastiraha Beseser Knafav Leolamim Vitzro Vitzor Chaim Es Nishmasa Adonai Hu Nachalasa Vesanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava Venomar Amen.
This concludes our service here in the chapel.
The brothers are going to be sitting Shiva starting this afternoon at 6521 Trouble. That's the problem. Minute will be from 4 to 8 p.m. Sunday to Tuesday. Then we'll be joining the rest of the family. And Minute tomorrow will be at 7:20.
Okay, thank you. Interment will take place at Har HaMenuchot in Yerushalayim, Tuesday at approximately 12:30 Israel time. Shiva is going to take place at the Khan residence, Kahanov 10, Sharei Chesed neighborhood in Yerushalayim, following the interment until 8 p.m. Shiva will also be taking place this afternoon at Mrs. Reiss's brother's residence at 6521 North Trumbull. Mincha Mariv will be at 7:20 from 4 to 8 p.m. today through Tuesday, and then everyone will join together afterwards. Mrs. Reiss's daughters will be returning to Chicago on Wednesday morning to sit Shiva through Monday morning at Park Plaza. That's 6840 North Sacramento Avenue in apartment 217. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise. I'm going to ask the male grandchildren to please step forward as we escort Mrs. Reiss from the chapel.